Hello, I'm Louise Gabrielle Lake, and welcome. In this video, I'd like to go through the top 10 reasons why people don't meditate even though they want to, or why they stop meditating and are struggling to maintain a regular practice. Before I begin, I just want to mention a few things. One is that there are meditation teachers who say that meditation is easy, and it can be for some. But for others, meditation can be challenging. I know for myself it was, and for the people I helped over the years. So some of the information I'm presenting in this video is partly my own experience and also those that I've helped with meditation practice. Now, I don't consider myself to be a meditation teacher per se. Professionally, I'm a therapist and a healing practitioner. However, I have for the past 35 years practiced and meditated in a number of traditions. And also as a therapist, I have a good understanding of the psychology of meditation, because there's definitely a psychology involved in maintaining a regular meditation practice. Now, also, I'm not going to go through the benefits of meditation or how to meditate in this video. This is really for those of you who really do want to meditate but are struggling to maintain a practice. Also, this top 10 is not necessarily in order of prevalence. It's just what I've observed over the years. So you might want to watch the whole thing, and you might discover that you're getting stuck in an area that you hadn't considered. So I want to suggest that you watch the whole thing. Okay, so let's get started. Reason number one why people don't meditate, even though they have the intention, is due to stress, fatigue, or feeling overwhelmed. Now, meditation practice requires self-discipline, and self-discipline requires energy. Every night when we go to bed, we are essentially recharging our inner batteries. And so the next morning, if we've had a good night's sleep, we start up the day with a full battery. And how we use that energy really can impact the quality of our lives. So for example, if you have a tendency to worry a lot, that consumes a lot of valuable energy and is not necessarily productive. So the same thing with stress. If you're under stress, you're going to be using up a lot of energy. Now, I like to make a distinction between temporary stress and chronic and ongoing stress. Temporary stress is when you're going through a situation like either you're moving, you're starting a new job, or you lost a job, or someone that you love has died or is in the hospital. Any of those situations is stressful and consumes a lot of energy. So it's more than likely that your meditation practice will fall by the wayside. And that's perfectly natural and normal. So just try to be kind to yourself. But the trick is returning to the practice after that temporary stress has resolved itself. If you find yourself procrastinating, then you want to check out the other reasons I go through in this video. And then we have chronic or ongoing stress. So this is if you have a stressful job or a difficult family situation. Now this is for people who have a stressful life but still want to meditate. And my suggestion is, and this might seem a bit contrary, but it's probably better that you don't meditate at this time, and instead what you can do is have a contemplation practice. So how that would work is when you get into bed at night, you take a few deep breaths and you relax your body, and then you ask yourself this question: how can I have less stress in my life? And some of you might add, and still have financial security, because many people are worried about that. So how can I have less stress in my life and still have financial security? And you're asking that very slowly, not expecting any answer, because you're planting a seed in your subconscious, your intuition, to find some solutions. Because, our intuition is actually better at finding solutions than our rational mind, because it works in an integrative fashion. It can connect dots that we don't normally connect on a conscious level. I know, because I, for many years, have taught an intuition training course, and so I know a lot about intuition and using your intuition to find solutions to problems. I'd just like to clarify something about intuition, using intuition. So the reason I suggest doing contemplation at bedtime is that our intuition is rooted in our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind is a very powerful force or influence in our everyday functioning. And so when we do contemplation at bedtime, we are tapping into what I like to call subconscious intuition, where your conscious mind won't interfere. Because one of the main things I teach in the intuition training course is learning how to distinguish between what I like to call pure intuition versus wishful thinking and imagination. So when we do a contemplation at bedtime, we're more likely to bypass the rational thinking mind, which always tries to interfere. Now, if you believe there's no solution to your stressful life, that's most likely a learned belief from your parents or your caretakers. Maybe when you were young, you learned that life is just one big struggle, there's no way out. So it might be helpful to write down what you remember of what you learned about that. So I want to encourage you to do the contemplation regardless of whether you think there's a solution or not. So that's what I'd like to suggest for chronic stress. I hope you find this helpful. Now we have fatigue or feeling overwhelmed. Usually you're under stress, you're also going to be tired. So if you're feeling fatigue, maybe you find yourself sitting down to meditate and then you start nodding off, and that can get kind of frustrating. A number of years ago, I created a program called Short Meditations for Each Body Type. I won't get into the particulars of that because I've done a whole series of videos on that. The links are below. I just want to mention that one of the guided meditations in that program is called Lying Down with Legs Up meditation. So what you're doing is your lower legs are resting on the seat of a sofa or chair, and the rest of your body is lying on the floor. And that has a very restorative effect on your whole system. It's actually based on a yoga restorative pose. And I guide you through a way to address the fatigue in your system. And also the body posture itself brings fresh circulation and energy to your vital organs and your brain. So now I know there are meditation teachers who say, well, that's not, authentic meditation. But for me, it's better to do that than not meditate at all. Now you may find that your mind drifts during that, and that's fine because your subconscious is still hearing the guided instructions. All right, so I hope you find that helpful. So the second reason why people don't meditate is maybe you're not doing the right meditation technique for your constitution or body type or personality. So a moment ago I mentioned a program that I developed called Short Meditations for Each Body Type. It's based on Ayurveda, which is India's traditional healing system. And in that system, there are different body types or constitutions. And so we're not all built the same. Each one of us has different requirements in exercise and diet And the same holds true for meditation. So you'll find the links to that down below. There's also a body type quiz that you can do so you can get more information about what your constitution is. So I invite you to check that out. Now, you also want to do a meditation that's tailored to anything that you're going through. So, for example, I had a client who came in who was suffering from anxiety, and she mentioned that she had tried meditation, but it just made her anxiety worse. So I asked her, okay, well, what kind of meditation were you doing? And she said, well, the kind where you focus on your breathing. And I told her that maybe that wouldn't be the right meditation for her if she's feeling anxious. Because, when we're anxious, it causes tension in our bodies. And so then what we need more than anything is a relaxation type of meditation. So on my short meditations program, I have a guided meditation called Conscious Relaxation, which walks you through how to relax your body. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, I tend to relax in front of the TV, or, maybe I get rest when I go to sleep at night, but it's not the same thing. It has a different effect. When you do conscious relaxation, it teaches you to be more calm or relaxed in your daily life. So you're actually developing a skill rather than just trying to relax because you're stressed out. Okay, so I hope you find that helpful. Now, interestingly enough, I did a little bit of research on the origins of meditation or the history of meditation, and not very much, but enough to find out some information, certainly in the yoga tradition, that meditation was normally taught one-on-one by a guru or an enlightened master who would give you a tailored meditation for you and your situation. I believe that that's maybe why there are so many meditation techniques out there, is that originally, in ancient times, meditation was a personalized practice. Okay, reason number 3 why people don't meditate, even though they want to, is being too busy. I have clients that come in sometimes and they say, I would love to meditate, but I'm just too busy. And to me, that's kind of an interesting statement. Unless you have very small children, if you're saying you're too busy to even do 10 minutes a day of meditation, then your life is probably out of balance, or that there's another underlying reason. Now, I know that our society conditions us to be busy and productive and, efficient. So it's kind of in our system. But meditation is actually important. The more frenetic our society is, the more important it is to meditate. Because you see, our nervous system has 2 parts to it. There's the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So when we're really busy, the sympathetic system is the one that's more active. And that sends more blood and energy to the surface, so to our muscles, and less to our vital organs. And then the parasympathetic system is the one that helps us to relax, and that sends more blood and energy to our vital organs. So if you're always busy, and it's not enough to just sleep at night, you need to have some rest times during the day. Most cultures actually have siestas. It's only in Western culture where we've gotten into the habit of constantly going. So if you're constantly on the go, that means over time you're depriving your vital organs of essential nutrients. So you might want to consider that if you're saying you're too busy. Now, an interesting fact is that research has shown that the majority of people spend about 2 to 4 hours a day watching TV or some kind of online entertainment. And, people will say, well, that helps me to relax and de-stress. And that could be true. Of course, meditation would be much more effective at de-stressing, but it's easier to, sit in front of the TV than to actively do a meditation. But the point I want to make here is that even when we're watching TV, research has shown, because they've hooked people up to electrodes, and you're not completely relaxing when you're watching TV. And as I mentioned earlier, just sleeping at night isn't enough. You're kind of playing catch up. Also, getting quiet isn't just about relaxing the body, it's about resting the mind. Our minds are way too busy in this day and age. So, it's just not a healthy way to live. So you might want to check out my guided meditation called Conscious Relaxation. So the link is below this video. Now, maybe you're too busy because you struggle with time management. I know I used to. I would make these long lists and never get through them. I eventually bumped into a book called Time Surfing by Paul Loomans, and he's a Zen teacher, and he has a number of recommendations on how to use your beingness to manage your time. And not all of the suggestions he made worked for me, but there was one in particular that really, really helped. And that was to use your intuition to decide what you're going to do when and how and all of that. And at first I thought, well, I'll never get anything done if I'm just going with the flow. But to my surprise, I was actually more productive when I went with the flow of things and did things as it felt right to do them, rather than just be rigid and follow the list. So I just wanted to share that with you. So the fourth reason why people don't meditate or stop meditating is due to fear. Now that might sound a bit strange, like why would you be afraid to sit down and just be quiet? But if you're not used to being introspective, to being with yourself and your emotions, maybe you've repressed certain emotions over the years, or you avoided feeling certain things, these might come up during meditation. So that can be threatening, and it can be unpleasant if they do come up. So maybe as a child, you were shamed, or maybe you have some deep hurt. Could be a number of different things. So how do you know if you're not meditating because of fear? Well, that's something that you have to kind of observe. So just go, okay, I'm going to sit down and meditate. And then you just see, okay, is there any kind of anxiety or a sudden sort of like tension in your body that comes up? So you might want to sit down and ask yourself, you might want to write this down. If I were afraid to meditate, what would I be afraid of? And just do a stream of consciousness and see what comes out. Now, fear can be a tricky emotion to work with on your own. So I often suggest that people seek the help of a therapist or a counselor. Because maybe you're told that certain emotions are unacceptable, and so they might be deeply buried, and that's difficult to access on your own. It helps to have professional help. Now, if you're fearful only for meditation, then the exercise I just suggested could help. You write down, if I were afraid to meditate, what would I be afraid of? But if you find yourself being fearful in other areas of your life, then you're talking about much more of a core issue that would definitely benefit from the help of a therapist. Myself as a therapist, I work very intuitively, so I'm able to tune into a person's subtle energy field or their aura, and even like in person or online at a distance. And I can feel if there are certain emotions that the person is repressing. Like sometimes there's anger. It's kind of like it's like an energy or a vibration lurking in their energy field. But that could be completely outside of their conscious awareness. because I've had experiences where I've said to a client, most clients know when they start working with me that I work intuitively and I'm going to tune into their energy. So if I report, you've got some anger, if they have really repressed it, like let's say they had a very angry parent, especially if they were unpredictable, had temper tantrums, then that person that I'm helping would have buried their anger very deeply just to survive the situation. And so sometimes I'll say, well, I'm picking up there's anger in your system, and they'll say, oh no, I'm not aware of any anger. And it's only through working through some, with therapy that they finally reach into themselves and they can access their anger. That can happen with fear as well. For people, for example, who are very much have to be on top of their game and all of that, they might not be aware that they're scared deep down. So it might show up in trying to meditate, and then they just sort of drift away from it, not knowing why. So one suggestion I have, if you suspect that you're afraid to be with yourself, is to just start really small. Just do a 5-minute meditation a day and keep it light. Keep it I'm just going to relax my body. And you'll find that you'll be able to do that. The fifth reason why people don't meditate, and this is more for people who stop meditating, and that is having high expectations. And this is high expectations part 1. I'll be dealing with part 2 in a moment. So maybe you started a meditation practice, you were expecting to be able to, calm your emotions and still your mind, and you found the exact opposite happened, that you encountered what the Buddhists call the monkey mind, and you just found it almost impossible to stay focused, which might have surprised you because you thought you were able to focus. But meditation is a whole different experience. And so maybe that caused you to feel discouraged or disillusioned. And so the solution is to keep in mind one of the Buddhist teachings that says, even if you have to bring your mind back 1,000 times during your meditation, your time will have been well spent. So that's essentially saying that you need to expect that your mind is going to wander, and that it's a valuable experience. It's a valuable practice to keep bringing your mind back. The other thing is I like to define meditation success as just showing up. I think it was Woody Allen who said 80% of success is just showing up, right? And he was referring to writing. So just keep that in mind. If you can just show up, even if you're not able to meditate very well, just do the best you can. One of the things I noticed with myself when I first started meditating and really struggling is that I started to notice that during the day I felt calmer. So when I was actually meditating, it was a real struggle, but the positive effect showed up in the rest of my life. So you might want to just take note of that. Now this leads me to number 6 reason why people stop meditating. High expectations part 2. And this is more to do with having reactions like frustration, impatience, or boredom. This happens usually to people who are very driven and who need to be on top of their game, and they want more to be happening in a meditation, so they get frustrated. I have a client who came in one time. He's very much a driven kind of person, a fire type in the Ayurvedic system. And he said, I started a meditation practice, but I'm finding it quite uneventful. And I thought that was a curious statement and kind of expected from someone like him. Like for me, meditation is very eventful, but it's not the kind of eventful that you would normally think of in ordinary life, external circumstances. It's very eventful in that you are confronted with yourself and you can learn certain things about yourself, like your impatience, and your maybe wanting to push the river. So how to deal with that? Well, you examine those expectations of wanting more to happen and begin to understand that meditation isn't about accomplishment. It's about being, just learning to be. And that can be kind of very strange if you're not familiar with that. So number 7 reason why people don't meditate, even though they want to, is procrastination or avoidance. Now that's actually a big topic, procrastination, because it can be due to different reasons. So I'd like to suggest that you check out all the other reasons on this video. Could be fear, could be expectations. There's usually something else going on when you're procrastinating. Now, you want to ask yourself, am I procrastinating only with meditation, or do I procrastinate for other things in my life? And if you procrastinate in other areas of your life, then we're talking about more of a core issue, and you might want to consider going to a therapist about that and exploring it. Reason number 8 why people stop meditating is due to physical pain. So, when I first started to meditate, I would sit down, and after about 5 minutes I would be in pain, my back and my knee, and at the time I was also a very anxious person, and anxiety creates tension in the body. So as soon as you sit down and you're not moving around, that's going to create some pain. And so what I discovered over time is that it was better for me to practice anything that's going to help with the anxiety and also relaxation in the body. I'm really a big proponent of that. I think a really good foundation to any meditation practice is relaxation in the body. So the other thing you could do is yoga, some stretching, exercise, that sort of thing, if you have physical pain due to anxiety or, chronic stress. Now, there's also physical pain due to medical conditions. And I know there are meditation teachers that will advise you to, it's okay to meditate lying down, or, find it comfortable if you have like a reclining armchair, you can use that. So it's more important in that case, no matter what the cause of your pain is, to be very comfortable when you're meditating. And yes, it's a little more difficult to keep your mind focused, but at least, you are meditating, and that's good. Reason number 9 why people don't meditate or stop meditating is a lack of support. Nowadays there's a lot of instruction online about how to meditate and a lot of information. But in the old days, like when I started meditating, there was no internet. You had to go out and find a meditation group, a teacher, and go there physically. It was, of course, not as convenient, but you had the support of a group meeting live. And I found that extremely helpful. And over the years, I've often been a member of one group or another. So I want to encourage you to have a look at that. When COVID hit, we were, of course, not able to meet in person, and we started to meet online. And that was a really good support, Now, I personally did try to maintain a meditation practice without the support of a group because I wanted to try out, since I had so many years of experience meditating, I wanted to see what it was like to not have the support of a group. And I can tell you it was challenging. So you don't realize the importance of a group support until it's not there, So I want to encourage you to maybe consider that you need the support of a group, particularly if you're an extrovert. Like I'm an introvert and I still needed a group support. So I hope you find that helpful. So now the final reason, number 10, why people don't meditate or stop meditating and that is a lack of motivation or desire. Now that sounds a little strange because we've been talking this whole time about people who want to meditate. But what I have found is if you started meditating because you heard or you read that it was good for you, it'll help you to be calmer and all of that. And that's a good way to start, because, okay, it's going to help you have better health. And, as I say, that's a good way to start. But it might not be sustaining. Over time, you might start feeling a little flat. And what I have found is a lot of people I've helped with meditation usually have a spiritual side, and they may not necessarily consider themselves to be spiritual, but I know when I tune into their energy field, I can feel whether somebody has sort of a spiritual side, whether or not they're aware of it. So if you start feeling like you've gotten a bit flat or you've stopped meditating because you're kind of lost the motivation, you might want to start considering a deeper reason to meditate. I like to make a distinction between human desire and spiritual yearning. So the human desire is what gets us going. We want to meditate because it's good for us and all of that. But eventually, our spiritual self starts to almost like tap us on the shoulder and say, I exist here. So you might want to start asking yourself, okay, do I have a spiritual yearning to know more my true nature, my higher nature, my divinity? That's where I would go if you find yourself losing the desire to meditate over time. And if you do, you might find that very, very fulfilling. I certainly did myself. Now, the other thing is maybe there's other areas of your life that are unfulfilled. I have worked with a number of creative, artistic people who want to meditate. So they come to me and they go, well, I want to meditate. And then I tune into their energy and I'm feeling this creative, artistic side of them like that's sitting on the back burner. And I ask them about it. I go, well, are you being creative and are you allowing yourself to be artistic? And they go, oh no, I gave up on that a long time ago. And I suggest to them that, well, rather than wanting to meditate, of course you could still want to meditate, but if you're not fulfilled in a core area of who you are, it's going to be difficult for you to sustain a meditation practice because there's going to be this niggling feeling inside that there's something that you're missing. So I want to encourage you to ask yourself, is there an area of my life that remains unfulfilled? And you want to maybe focus on that first before you get into meditation. Now, I know that sounds crazy, because I want to encourage you to meditate, but at the same time, we're talking about sustaining a practice. So I'm just looking at all the things that need to be addressed to sustain a practice. So I hope you found this information helpful, and I wish you all the very best in having a successful meditation practice. Thanks for watching.